Hello everybody, this is Shaman John, and this little video blog here today is about something that's come up quite a bit over time with my clients, and I thought maybe I should cover the subject. And it's basically about signs and psychic readings and confirmations and things like that. And what I've noticed, what I've experienced, and what I've seen a lot with my clients and also personally, is that, in the shaman's view of life, is that, we essentially can choose our destiny. We can create our lives. We can create the experiences in our lives, right? This is the point of the whole work, of coming into our power and freedom and being co-creators and playing like kids in the theater. And we may come in with some idea from the non-physical world to this lifetime of what we want to do and who we are and what we want to experience, and we think of that sometimes as our destiny. We don't do fate as shamans, because fate is fatal, right? Whereas a destiny is something you choose. It's choosing life. It's being a participant in your life and in creating your script and creating your life and your destiny and your experiences. And things that are fated would be the old patterns that we have to clear to get rid of things that are controlling what you're creating or manifesting in your life experientially. So what I've noticed is that when you have a very strong signal, a very strong desire for a particular set of experiences, and often can be in a form. So let's say it's relationship. I have a desire to be in a certain kind of relationship, and I've just met somebody that matches all of those experiences really, really well. And so my signal is really built up around that particular person and this particular form. And then I'll go to a psychic or go get a reading or start to see signs show up, with their name on it, or synchronistic events, and myriad things that seem to make it very clear that is indeed the person for me. I mean, channels will tell us that we've had lifetimes together and we're still working out an agreement and karma or these types of things. And and the issue is that what comes first, the sign or the signal? And what I've experienced often is that the universe makes us right. So we will always get evidence to support whatever it is that we feel very strongly that we believe in, or that we believe, or that we desire strongly. And so oftentimes those signs and those readings and those things that give us evidence are simply a match to what we are sending out, and can change and may have to change, particularly if that person's not available. And so this has happened. I've seen this happen. I've seen an individual meet somebody, and in all of the readings and all the signs and all the things say that they're meant to be together their whole life, and they've been meant for each other, for lifetimes and such. And then, for some reason it doesn't happen. One of them is not available, and then they'll meet. Then that same person runs into someone else, and the same thing happens. There's all these signs that they are meant to be together for their entire life, and so on and so forth. And so it can't necessarily be true for five different people. So that has been one example of that. And so the point being here is to recognize that you don't ever even want to give your power away to the signs or to the reading. In the end, what you do have is your own guidance. You do have the ability to know whether this particular form, this particular person, this particular job, this particular house or whatever is a match to what you want deeply, in that, you will feel that. You will know that inherently, that this really feels good. But it's not the form. You don't want to get confused with the form, because that's where you get locked in. Well, I feel it on every level that is the person for me, and they're not available. And may not want to even choose to be with you for whatever reason. And so, but if you recognize that they are providing a certain number of experiences that I want, and sort of dialing into that, and tuning your guidance system to know that, yes, that feels good, that's what I want, but letting go of the form, then what it does is it allows the universe to deliver to you a whole nother form that will fulfill those experiences equally, if not then greater. Because each time that you run into somebody that feels like the person, and yet for some reason it doesn't quite come together, there's another level of refinement around what it is you're actually wanting. For example, I want that person to also be available to me. So I hope this is clear. I hope you understand, and I'm sure it brings up a lot of questions. It always has when I've had this conversation. Know that, having said what I've just said, it's what's true about the world and the universe is sort of all of the above. So there are occasions where the reading is a, does come essentially before the signal. So and that's where we have to worry about sorcery. We have to worry about a reading that says, just like when we're in shamanic tracking, we're doing a reading on somebody into their destiny, into their future, and we can see 100 different possibilities, because you're always free to make a choice to change your any given moment. And if we see something that is clearly not something this person has asked us or has told us that they want to experience, a client wants to experience, then we don't want to tell them about that particular reading, because then it's like all diagnosis is sorcery. It becomes something that they think, oh, this person who can see something I don't, this shaman, this psychic, this doctor, whatever, is telling me this is what's going to happen to me. Well, that tends to lock it in. Again, the universe will give evidence to support, to make that right, to make that actually manifest as an experience. So part of the training of the shaman is to use those tracking skills to be able to track forward in time and see what the person's signal is relative to what they would prefer to be experiencing, but to then help map a story or map it in a way that it becomes more about what they actually want to experience, and that the universe can actually deliver. Because that house may not be available, that job may not be available, that person may not be available, even though they seem like such a perfect match for the client. So I hope that's clear. I could probably go on and on about it, but I want to try and keep this short, and I would encourage you to email me with any questions, John, Jon, at dreamingintobeing.com. And if I think of more, I will say more about it. All right, thank you. So let me give you a concrete example. There was a client, a colleague of mine actually, another shaman that that had gotten their birth chart read, an astrological reading that did indeed explain much of what had been happening in their life, because that's a form of tracking. When we're born, and the planet configuration and so on has a lot to do with the patterns within our soul before we come in. So everything sort of matches up, right? Everything makes everything right. And then at some point I did some work with this client, and we as a part of that work we did with the death rites. We did a death and rebirth ceremony, very powerful, to help clear away any ancestral DNA oriented patterns and influences, and did the work. Did give the homework to do and so on, and then a bunch of things had shifted in her life pretty radically. She started going through some interesting experiences, and she went back to her astrologer, and the astrologer was looking at this at the chart, going, this last 6 months, these things really shouldn't have been happening. This isn't a match to your birth chart. And then she called me about that, and I tracked this possibility that in doing the death and rebirth, we actually changed the chart to the day and the time that we did that ceremony. And so she went back and she had the chart read for that day and time, and sure enough, everything lined up and matched. Okay, so just think about that for a little bit. And so we then went one step further, did a little bit of an experiment, because this wasn't exactly the ideal set of influences for her yet either. And so what she did was she went back to her astrologer and said, hey, relative to, she was successful in many parts of her life, but relative to her relationships, it was still an issue. So she romantic relationships. And so she had the astrologer dial in a chart, a future date and time that would be more conducive to what she preferred to experience, and we did the ceremony at that date and time, and indeed it worked. And so again, it speaks to the idea that our desire to create our own life experiences, to ask and receive, to create the scripts in our life, when you are free from past influences, when you've done the shamanic work that frees you from the heavy energies, the imprints, the patterns, the ancestral influences, the influences of other beings around you, it's just as complex as physical life. You then are free to create the story you prefer to live, and then all the readings match up. Okay, so I even had that happen with my teacher Alberto. I learned this a long time ago. I was in the training, I was still doing classes, and someone this very powerful psychic had said that my wife and I were going to adopt a child from Russia or something, and we better get on it because that child is waiting, and so on and so forth. And so we thought, boy, we ought to look. We started looking into it, and we were kind of going down that road, that story. And then I went to take one of the advanced classes with the Four Winds Healing the Light Body School program. It was actually an advanced divination, destiny retrieval. And I told Alberto about this story. I said, man, what do you think? I think we're going to be adopting a child. He says, well, wait until after the class, because the work we're going to do might change everything. And sure enough, it did. It did. We did the class, finished the class, went back and looked at what that possible story was, and it was no longer there. So there you have it. It's really about keeping your power, and really being careful all the different ways in which you might be giving it away. Even with the best of intentions, none of these intentions other than sorcery are malicious and so on. So it's not a bad thing and all that, but it's very nuanced. And so, as shamans, we're trained very carefully about that. I will notice if a client begins to use me as a way to avoid their own guidance and try and create, just try and sort of go with whatever I would suggest or say, and we will try not to do that. We will lose a client over that. We don't want to become that. That is antithetical to shamanism, which is about freeing and empowering people to create their own experiences and follow their own guidance, and in no way depend on that of another. The tracking is fine. We can track, we can tell somebody where they're at currently, consciously or not, in terms of the signal and what they're asking for, and help them shift it to what they want. but it's not about telling them what they should want. Okay, thank you. I appreciate you listening.